All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm UltraKellon. This is G-Dep, everybody.
Peace. What's going on?
Man, can't complain, man. So another episode of Real Estate Controls Everything Around Me. Man, so first and foremost, I know I told you a little bit off camera. For me, I can vividly remember watching your videos and, listen to your music back when I was in 8th grade, I think.
Wow.
Like 2001, 2002.
2001.
I think I was 14 years old. I'm 38 now.
Wow. God bless you.
So first and foremost, I am very thankful for people like you who actually give me their time.
Oh, good. Thanks for the platform,
Nah, man, because like I said, I love hip hop. I have hip hop, music tattoos all on me. And for the fact that people who I listened to growing up as a kid and are willing to sit down with me, tell me their story, I don't take it for granted at all.
Oh, dope, man. It's official, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. So for you, born and raised in New York, correct?
For sure. Yeah.
What part?
Harlem, Bronx. You know what I mean? Harlem mostly.
Okay.
What?
What's that? Were you born in the Bronx and then raised in Harlem?
Nah, I was born in Harlem, but we kind of commuted to the Bronx every now and then. Then I moved back to Harlem, stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. Because of people who don't know, depending on where you are in Harlem, you're right next to the Bronx.
Yeah. It's like we cousins, man. You know what I mean? Right.
But like when it comes to who G-Dep is, it's definitely Harlem.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, so for you growing up, this is going from late 70s, mid 70s into the 80s, or what year?
Yeah, 74. I was born in 74. You know what I mean? So, all the way up, man, from the 70s to here we are. You know what I mean?
So for people who don't really know, like, what was Harlem really like back then?
Man, Harlem was always a place that was full of culture. You know what I mean? It was one of the places that it was like a village. You know what I mean? The whole neighborhood raised each other. Like you know what I mean? It was one of the places you could just go outside and the neighborhood you were from took care of you, watched out for you. You know what I mean? It was one of them things. You had to be in the house by the time the street lights came on, though, man. You know what I mean? Then because if not, you was on your own after that. You was in a different you was playing with it in a different league once them lights came on. You know what I mean?
You was off the porch.
Yeah, you was off the porch at that point. So you had to just watch yourself.
What's that? Do you think the families back then growing up, do you think it had more of a community to where like you said, it was like a village, like raised a kid pretty much?
Definitely, man. I think with all the how things change with now more protective rights and things. It's a curse and a blessing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because
back then the other parents that weren't your parents, they had the permission to chastise you. Nowadays, somebody that ain't your kid, somebody that ain't your parent, chastise you, the kid could lock you up.
Right.
So it's just different now.
That's like I remember an episode of Good Times back in the day where one of Michael's friends did something and James Ever whooped him too.
Right. Yeah, that was a real thing. You know what I mean?
And like I said, I think you made a good point where you say it's a gift and a curse because yes, you don't want your kid, getting crazy disciplined by somebody else. But if your kid is out there in the streets acting up and you think of somebody who knows you would have this, hey, say something to him, man.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just the world we live in, man. I guess the cameras and stuff like that, kind of compensate for a lot of that now. You know what I mean? Because you can actually see what's happening. You know what I mean? Yeah,
true. So your family, are they originally from New York or did they migrate here from someplace else?
Yeah, my grandmom's was originally from Florida. Okay. She grew up in Orlando. And my grandfather, he was from down south somewhere. I'm not all the way sure. You know what I mean? But yeah, they came up. Yeah, I think the late 40s.
Oh, they came early.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And then they had my parents and my moms and their siblings. Her siblings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like whenever I meet black people from Harlem, like they have the more black American, lineage, as opposed like when I meet the black people from from Queens or maybe from from Brooklyn, they have like the West
Yeah,
Indian.
West Indian. Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Yeah. I don't know why that is, but I guess that's just geographically how it ended up. Yeah, well.
Yeah, no, because you know, so I don't know if you've been to Chicago before. So Chicago is more just Black American.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
I've been there before, but I haven't been there in a while though. But yeah,
I tell people all the time, it's a cheaper and like I guess you could say it's a cleaner version of New York.
Oh, what?
Yeah, like cause we
I can see that. I can see that.
Cause like we don't, it's not a concrete jungle like New York is. Like we have like front yards and stuff like that.
Got
like you know,
but it is a jungle though.
it is. It can be.
I got you.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, Chicago. New York is Chicago on steroids.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
It makes sense. It makes sense because I could see that when I was out there. It kind of gives you that same city vibe, but certain places, like you said, it's like this ain't New York. Yeah, but like I get it though. You know, I was in some area where it was like a trestle, also with buildings. I was like, wow, this is like kind of reminiscent of New York. You know, but yeah.
So, growing up in Harlem, I know you're saying how like from like the 70s and stuff, family oriented, like you're seeing more of the village aspect. When Harlem started getting like I guess like the negative reputation, when did that start change? Like in the 80s when like I guess like the crack cocaine era came in and like kind of Harlem started shifting a little bit.
Yeah, I could say because that's around the time when I started really coming outside. You figure in the 80s I was 10, 11. So when I was living, I kind of moved to the Bronx at that exact kind of specific time. You know what I'm saying? So like Harlem, before I left Harlem in like figure the early 80s, 81, 82, it was like kind of like it was still decent. Like, people was out there getting money. Don't get me wrong, I imagine, because I used to see, nice cars, nice clothes. I'm pretty sure that, it was going down, But,
you know how it is like when you get older, you start connecting the dots.
Yeah, you start connecting the dots. I didn't really know what was happening. You didn't really see stuff like on the street, like that. But like, so you figure, fast forward to 83, 84, I moved. 85, I moved to the Bronx. And that's when kind of crack started going on. So whenever I did come back to Harlem, I only stayed in the Bronx for a couple of years, like maybe a year or two, you know what I mean? And even then, I still went to school in Harlem. So I used to, commute, just take the little bus. But when I left, not living in Harlem and then coming back to live in Harlem again, that's when it changed to me. Like, you saw more of a street life. You saw more of a, younger kids out there. Yo, he's selling drugs or he getting money. Like, you see a young kid ride by on a motorbike. You like, oh, how you get that? You know what I mean? So, I start realizing what was happening. You know what I mean? You start seeing people, the demeanor changing. Oh, she on drugs, man. Oh, this one, that one. Stuff like that. So that's kind of how Harlem changed for me, you know what I mean? And
then like you said, like, you start getting older and you kind of start seeing things a little differently.
Yeah, that too, you know what I mean? You start realizing what you were seeing before is what it is now, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's okay, yeah. So, yeah.
Was it kind of like for you a decision that you were trying to make? All right, like, I know how it is when people are from certain areas, you're kind of walking that line, like, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, or you kind of making a decision like, hey, I'm staying on the straight and narrow. I'm trying to go to college. I'm trying to do X, Y, Z. Or you know what? I get why people go that route, but I need to go make some money. Or I need to go take care of this. I need to go over here for a little bit and do what I can do and then try to get back to the other side.
Right. I mean, I can't lie. I was more kind of just caught up in what I saw. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't. It wasn't one of those things that it was kind of like a big influence, but it was just the culture that I lived in, and then so as a youth, you don't really understand what comes with that, you know what I mean? You just see, dudes, dressed nice, you see dudes in the cars, you see dudes, but you don't really understand, like, the seriousness, like, really, really behind it. You just, even if you did want to participate in it, you know what I mean? Yeah, you just still don't really understand what you're doing to your neighborhood and which, you know what I'm saying? So you know, I just kind of was like, yo, you know, if I had a chance to do that, I probably would. You know what I mean?
You know, I mean, you can't fault somebody when, like, you know, like you said, if that's all you see growing up, like whether you realize or not, you're programmed.
Right.
Whether consciously or subconsciously.
Copy.
And, you know, and that can be good or bad depending on where you grew up.
Right.
And I think a lot of us, like, I'm a real estate investor. My dad was a real estate investor. You know, you don't realize it sometimes that, like, you know, you just do what you saw was done.
You saw was done. That's a fact.
You know, no different than where, for you, like if you had a music artist in your family and you saw that growing up, that kind of means, oh, I could do it for a living too.
Right. And I can't lie, like I actually had positive role models in my family. So I think that's what kind of really, like, you know, slowed me down in a way, like, you know what I mean? Like I never really jumped full-fledged, you know, head first into, yo, I need to be out here. You know what I mean? It was like, wow, I see the money. This is kind of good. But I still went to school. You know, I still did this. I still, you know, always, even if I was selling drugs, I was going to school. You know what I mean? So it was like,
and I know people who are like that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So that was my thing. Like I kind of subconsciously, like you said, knew that what I was doing, what was out there was, you know, one thing, but you know, the reality was, you got to go to school. You got to, you know what I'm saying? You can't just be selling drugs all day. You know
Right. You know, because even when I heard some of your backstory, you were in college for a bit too, weren't you?
Yeah.
Even before the whole situation happened, like you were in school back then, right?
Yeah. I mean, I graduated. You know, I went to college. You know, dropped out. You know, but yeah, you know, so you know, I understood that. You know, you needed to, you know, do something, you know, positive. I don't know if I really like knew that was, you know, if I looked at it like positivity, but that was, like you said, like, you know, that was what I was trained to, you know, programmed to do, like, you know, go to school, you know, possibly get a degree. I didn't know why, you know what I mean? But it was just like, okay, you go to school, you know, you get your degree. You know, I didn't even understand that, you know, you get your degree and you make money from it. Like, you know, I don't think like that I can remember. Yeah. Like, it was just like, you know, that's what you do. You go to school, you graduate, and, you know, you get a good job. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think too, probably whoever were the positive influence in your life, you know, most people, if they're, whether a parent, older cousin, older uncle, whatever maybe, they are just a positive, you know, role model in your life, they always want better for you than what they had.
Right.
You know, like I'm sure if you have kids right now, you want them to maybe have a little bit of toughness, but you don't necessarily want them to go through the same trials and tribulations that you went through.
Right. When you could tell them, explain to them. So I think that's what happened with me. Like my parents were pushing me a certain way. So I really didn't know anything else, you know what I mean? It was just like, okay, yeah, I'll go to school. You know? Right. Word.
So even when you were kind of walking the line between street or straight and narrow, when did music come into the play?
Well, music, that was what I was getting ready to say. It was just like, you know, I knew that, you know, getting college and, you know, was a positive, was a positive path to take. But I also understood that I wanted to do music, you know? So it was like, yo, you know, all this is cool, you know what I'm saying? But what I really want to do is this, you know what I'm saying? So that was my mindset in school. That was kind of why, like, one of the things that, you know, not influenced me, but, you know, one of the decision making, you know, that influenced my decision making, you know, knowing that I wanted to do music. I was like, look, I just, I forget this. I'm gonna do, you know, I could make it with this music, and that's what I told my moms, and she was like, you can't be serious. I was like, Mom, I'm telling you, I'm really good. She was like, yo, if you don't take your ass behind this to school, I was like, yo, look. What's that? She was like, what was that, Sister Act 2 with the Lauryn Hill? She was like that, Mom? Take your walk, man. She was like, all right, well, after you do your homework, you know what I'm saying? And then I was like, you know, then one day I really told her, I said, Mom, I'm not going, you know, I'm not really going to go back to school. She was like, well, you got to think, man, that was what, early 90s, mid 90s? Yeah. At that time, hip hop was what, 13, 14 years old? Yeah, you know what I mean? So she was just, she understood that hip hop was a thing, and it was, you know, but she was like, yo, look, but then you know, I was at the age where she was like, look, you're a grown man in a way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't, like, force you to go to school. You know what I mean? So she was like, well, if that's what you want to do, you know, if you know, hopefully you'll go back. You know, you'll see that that's not, you know, you'll see that whatever you're going to see. And then if you want to go back, you know? But yeah.
What was the first big break?
I would have to say when I got a shout out on the back of Gangstar's album. Actually, my first big break to me.
Yeah, because you were on that song, The Mall.
Yeah. But they gave me a shout out before that. On the album right before that, they gave me a shout out because my man Shiggy Shah, he was dealing with them. You know what I mean? Shiggy Shah and Panchi. Wild Comanche.
NYGs?
Yeah, NYG, bro. Yeah, that's a fact. So we from the same neighborhood. So yeah, so they you know, they always would like kind of play my demos to Primo and stuff like that. So one day he was like, yo, Primo shouted you out on the back of the album. I was like, hell no, word. So that was like kind of the biggest thing for me at that time. Like this was like 93, 92.
So that was like a daily operation?
Either that or Take It Personal. Maybe what year Take It Personal came out?
Oh no, that might have been. It was. I would say if it was an album, maybe Daily Operation, maybe a Hard to Earn.
Okay.
Hard to Earn, the one that had a Mass Appeal on there.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good question. I gotta find out what exactly album that was on.
Yeah.
But it was. Yeah, I was on that, and then I did a mixtape with Chill Will from the East Side.
Okay.
And he was big at the. You know, he was the biggest artist that we knew. You know, the biggest DJ that we knew. And I wound up getting on his album. I mean, his mixtape. So those are my accomplishments at that time. You know what I mean?
Because when you were on the song "The Mall," that was on what Gangster album was that? It came out in '98. One with the
Moment of Truth.
Moment of Truth. One with Melissa on there. All right, so let me ask you this. All right, so I know in hip hop at that time in New York, you had the backpack movement and stuff like that. That wasn't that. But then you also had like the underground hardcore movement. I feel like that was more of that sound. And then you kind of had the glitz and glamour, what the mainstream was.
Right.
So you already had an affiliation with Gangstar and like, you know, that kind of world. So how did it end up going from being there to end up being like Bad Boy and like, you know, that type of music?
Right. I mean, well, Bad Boy, people, I don't know. People kind of mistake Bad Boy for this like mainstream shiny label. You know what I mean? But, you know, that was Puff's thing. Like he was able to shine, you know, he was able to make make diamonds out of you know, out of coal. Like you know what I mean. So he was into hip hop. Like, you know what I mean. But it was just, you know, he understood that, you know, you had to make it, you know, appealing. You know what I'm saying? In order to, you know, he had a vision. He wanted to, you know, make it really universal and worldwide. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, me being who I was and, you know, the way I was coming from with my craft, you know, it was welcome. Biggie was the most underground rapper you want to know, like, you know what I'm saying? But he just was, you know, they had the formula to make it appeal to anybody, you know what I mean? And so that was, you know, that was what that was, you know what I mean?
And actually, that's a good point because when I interviewed LP, like, you know, he talked about that. He was like, you know, people forget that Biggie's debut album, that was a dark album.
Hell yeah.
It just had Juicy on there.
Yeah, exactly. Word, basically.
But if you listen to Suicidal Thoughts and, you know,
like the whole album was just like, you know, I don't want to live no more.
Right.
Something like this shit was like, you know, so, but people just appeal to it. Like, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, if it's good, it's good, you know?
True. So you think that maybe you were trying to figure out a way to get the best of both worlds?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I really didn't think about it that much, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I was trying to get signed since I was, you know, a younger guy, you know. So when that came around, you know, I was just like, you know, that was the opportunity I was looking for, you know what I mean? I was like, you know, it's a label. I didn't think about, you know, with the label, you know, what people looked at the label as and all of that, you know what I'm saying?
You're kind of like, I need to get my foot in the door.
Yeah, it was like, okay, Bad Boy, you know what I mean? Like,
was there a thing where, cause did Premier already have Payday Records back then or no?
I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what label I know he was on a major label at that time.
They were on Chrysalis or something like that, like way back in the day. I don't know if that was by the time you came around Moment of Truth. I think with Moment of Truth, they were on
damn, the name escaped me, man. It escapes me, but it was a major label.
Yeah. So it was never a conversation with him about like, you know, maybe going toward like that direction or no?
Nah. It was just like, you know, me personally, like I never really saw the you know, the distinction between, you know, what I was doing before hip hop, before Bad Boy, and what I did when I got to Bad Boy. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, you know, this is, you know, if y'all didn't know, like I make songs. Like I'm trying to make songs. I don't know what, you know, you think this hip hop thing is. Like there's no need to say that hip hop needs to be this or that, you know what I mean? I think it's just, you know, it's a universal art to me, you know what I'm saying? That's how I looked at it, you know what I'm saying?
And then let's be real, there aren't that many artists like yourself that can do both, that can do more the underground hardcore with Premier and then have, you know, a smash hit on the radio, like, you know, on Bad Boy Records. Like, you know, those, there aren't, I mean, you, Biggie, you know, maybe a couple other artists here and there, but there aren't that many artists who really can have their foot in both windows and like, you know, actually be good at it.
Oh, well, that's a blessing, man. You know what I mean? I appreciate it. I mean, I think it just comes from, you know, just you know, realizing that it's all music. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. You know what I mean?
So the deal with Bad Boy came like in '99 or 2000?
That came in '98.
Okay.
Yeah, '98. It was a little after. I remember it was funny because I had just performed. I had performed the Mall song. Like the day my daughter was born on November 9th. I performed the Mall song. She was born on November 10th. November 9th. I'm performing. I never forget. I had the I tried to, you know, show some showmanship, you know what I mean? So, you know, my man had just bought an Averex, borrowed his Averex, right? I had a Coogee sweater under the Averex, you know what I mean? So I was kind of crispy, you know. I had the Averex. I threw some jewels on, had my little thing. But then I threw a big old North Face on over all of that.
Okay.
Had the little crazy Scully on, all crazy. You know what I'm saying? So when I got on the stage,
you were sweating like crazy.
Yeah, but it was winter. It was like, you know, different winter. You know, back then in November, it was cold. Right, you know what I mean? So threw that on, got on stage. So as I'm rhyming, I'm taking the jacket off. You know, cause like now I'm talking about being fly. You know what I mean? So I'll come on, don't be mad at me. I used to be King Raggedy, things nagging me, shit, I had to breathe, you know what I mean? And then after that, I started taking off my hat. I got the Coogee hat on under. So they like, what the hell, what's Shorty doing? You know what I'm saying? So now I got the Coogee hat on, around the little ring shining. I'm like, yeah. So then I take the jacket off, I got the leather on. They like, whoa, they going crazy, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, yeah. So boom, so yeah, I did that. And then, you know, I don't even know why I brought this up, but I was just like, you know, that I just say that to say, like, right after that, you know, I wound up getting signed that same like month, like, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, hell.
Layers and more layers coming off.
Yeah, man. So by the time it was done, I'm standing there, you know what I mean? I had to join, you know. Yeah, it was an ill little night. That was the first time, you know, I performed like, you know, in front of a crowd that, you know, embraced what we was doing. It wasn't like, you know, a showcase, you know what I'm saying? We did the thing. Mobb Deep was there that not Mobb Deep, MOP was there that night. Got to meet Fame for the first time, Billy Danz and them were. Shout out to them, man. And
then also along your career, Black Rob was a big push for you too, wasn't he?
Yeah, for sure, man. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have, you know, that was who introduced me to Puffy and Harv and all of them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, rest in peace to Black Rob, man.
Yeah, rest in peace to my bro, man.
Yeah, man. When did you guys first meet?
We met actually about a few months before that, you know what I mean? Like, I knew he was from the neighborhood, but we never actually bumped, you know, crossed paths, you know what I'm saying?
So you're from Harlem, he's from Spanish Harlem, right?
No, we both from the same area. We both from Spanish Harlem. You know, we both lived in Spanish Harlem at the time. You know, I grew up in Harlem as well, you know what I'm saying? On 64th. A lot of people say that's the Heights, but at the time, it was Harlem, you know what I mean?
Washington Heights?
Yeah, you know what I mean? But, you know, I grew up there, and then, you know, I also grew up on the east side with my grandmom's where she lived at. And that was where Rob lived at as well. He lived across the street in Jefferson.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, because Spanish Harlem is all east side of Harlem, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Yeah, because you got like uptown east side too. Before Harlem, before the east side ends, on like 120, I would say 130th, the east side kind of ends. It kind of goes up towards the west side, the Harlem, what's that? The East River. Yep. It kind of goes up and it cuts the east side off, and it starts going up to the west. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's up there you wouldn't consider that East Harlem. You know what I mean? I mean Spanish Harlem. So that that right there isn't called Spanish Harlem. You know what I'm saying? So. Not the whole east side, you know what I mean? It's just like a certain area, like kind of like where like the, where Little Italy kind of used to be and all of that, you know what I mean?
So, first album comes out 2001?
First album 2001, yeah.
Yeah. So, what's that rush really like when not only you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears, what do they say? It takes your whole lifetime to make your first album.
Yeah.
And then it finally comes together, and not just comes together, it comes together on probably the hottest label at the time. And on top of that, it's not like it's shelved, it's actually out and it's doing really well. And you have one of the biggest hits, in the even off camera, I talked to you about how big, I looked at, a Special Delivery remix in the same light as almost having Flavor in Your Ear remix.
Copy. I appreciate that. Yeah, man. Word. I mean, it was crazy. It was like, every once in a while I would kind of stop and be like, yo, this is crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like exactly how you would think a person is, like, yo, man, I felt that energy. Like I was like, damn, man, this is like a dream come true, man,
And I think, sometimes when you're so caught up in it, even if you did have a chance to, it's hard to really appreciate what's going on around you at the time.
Yeah, you can't, I don't think you can ever kind of, grasp the whole thing, you know what I mean? It's hard to wrap your head around, but you do just appreciate the fact that, you you made it to where, you kind of wanted to make it, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of times, I didn't realize how big the thing was, you know what I mean? I remember the first time, I heard the stuff on the radio, you know what I mean? And people just call you, yo, we just heard your joint on, we saw this, we saw that. Word, you saw that? Wow, you know what I'm saying? And so it was crazy. I remember the first time, I got approached, I'm still in the street, kind of, you know what I'm saying? And we at a club, and this was a little bit before the album even dropped, you know what I mean? I think people had seen me on I don't know what they saw me on. They might have saw me on the back of maybe Puffy,
okay, yeah,
the Forever album or whatever like that, or the Saga Continues or whatever, you know what I mean? So, but I don't have nothing out. I don't got no single out, no video. I might have did Black Rob, whoa, just in it, you don't even know it's me. How do you even know to say it was something to me, you know what I mean? So I'm at the bar. I never forget. I'm at the bar. Somebody taps me, and I'm like, yo, what's up? What? You know what I mean? I felt really
something about to happen.
Yeah, something was going on. I was like, what happened, man? I was like, what's up? He was like, yo, nah. Just wanted to say, yo, keep doing your thing, bro. I was like, oh, word? I was say, yo, my bad. I said, yo, good looking. I said, damn, man. You know what I mean? I gotta slow down. You know what I mean? I said, yeah, well.
Got PTSD.
Yeah, word up. Survivor's guilt around it, bro. I was like, yo, I was really paranoid. So I was like, yo, bro, what's up? What happened?
Hey, man, yeah, I like the verse you did, man.
Yeah, he's like, yo, man, that special look. I was like,
you know about that?
Word, that's what I'm saying. He was like, yo, that's fire, yo, you did the thing. I was like, oh, wow.
I mean, but it's, a small interaction like that might have been one of the first inclinations that you had that your life is about to change forever.
Yeah, it actually was. The first time I had to focus after that, I was like, yo, hold up. I was like, this thing means something, you know what I mean? Because, you don't really see it until, you see it, you know what I mean? And I was like, that was the day I met Slick Rick, too. That was the first day I met an artist that I, grew up watching. Met him that night.
I said basically the way I feel right now is the way you felt when you met Slick Rick.
Oh, what is shit? Oh, man, what piece of it? Yeah, man. That's it, man. I guess. You know what I mean?
I mean,
I was like, man. He was like, yo, I said, yo, man, you got any like advice for me, man? Like, you know, he was like, yeah, man, stay away from negativity. I never forget what he said. Well,
I mean, and I think too, you know, to bring back up my interview with LP, he made a good point. He was like, man, like, you know, the music business, he's like, that part kills your drive. He's like, you know, you got to stay away from that part of it, like, you know, the negativity part of it, you know, and try to be as positive and upbeat as you can, and just focus on what you can control. You know, so for you making the music, you know, meeting the right people and stuff like that, what goes on in the corporate offices, you only have so much control over it.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I'm glad that I didn't really need to, I can't say I didn't need to, but I really didn't kind of experience that side of the business when I first got signed. Like, I knew about contracts, and I knew about, you know, invoices, and you know, I learned about invoices and you know, just stuff like that. But you know, I wasn't concerned with it. Like, I just knew that we had to sign a deal, get a lawyer, you know what I mean? But as far as like your business, once you were on, you know, that was something that I didn't concern myself with a lot. Like, you know, what you know, the marketing side of it, what was going on, you know, as far as in the office, like, you know, how they were, you know, doing the splits, and I didn't get into none of that. You know what I mean? So I'm glad, you know, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because maybe it would have, you know, kind of changed my, you know,
What tainted it?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe changed my process or something, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I learned that later. And Easy's right, like, you know, the business side of it will kind of like, you know, it's more daunting than just being an artist, you know, being creative, you know what I'm saying? So, you know.
Well, because even like, you know, when we spoke off camera, you know, I mentioned like the interaction that I guess kind of went viral when you first came home, and like, you know, Puff had a chance to see you again. I mean, like I said, it looked like two long lost brothers almost.
Yeah, man. It was dope to see the brother, man. I mean, you know, when we were doing our thing, we had nothing but like just good times, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we used to be here around the world doing this, yo, everything was yo, we got it, yo, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, when I got to see him again, it was like it was seeing like I saw my brother again, like, yo, what's up? Like, what's happening, you know? And that's just how it was.
So how did it feel when you think back to your childhood, you know, going through the trials and tribulations, being a kid growing up in Harlem, trying to figure it out, and then you look up, you know, 10, 15 years later, you're on one of the biggest labels in the world, and you're going on tour, you're doing this, doing that, you're in different countries, and like, you know, it's kind of hard to step back and smell the roses when you're in it, but like, you know, you start getting old, you start looking back on it like, man, like, you know, who would have thought?
Yeah, for sure, you know, definitely, man, definitely. So your question was,
you know, like what's like your thought process, like, you know, when it finally, I guess, like, you know, the dream finally happened?
Oh, I mean, it was just more like, you know, it became a job. You know what I mean? It was like, that's how I looked at it. Like, I didn't really think, you know, people used to be like, yo, you met this one, wow, you did that, wow, you did a song. And I'm like, yo, bro, we all working. Everybody is working. It ain't like, you know, dudes got, you know, it's cool that you meet these people, but even when you meet, like, say when I met, like, you meet a Method Man for the first time, you know, you a Red Man, you know, you like, you know, it's cool, you know, it's like, wow, you know what I mean? But you got a job to do too now, you know what I mean? So it's like, all right, yo, that's what's up, wow, so what we doing? And it's like unspoken. It's like, yo, okay, we working, you know what I mean? There's no need to be starstruck, there's no need to be, you know, feeling fanned out or nothing, you know what I mean? This is, we all doing the same thing. You got a contract to fulfill just like I do, you know what I mean? So that's how it, you know, that was the mindset when you go into all of that, you know what I mean? Well,
the year is 2010.
Yeah,
2010. So something that you had did in your youth, I guess, like you said, it had been weighing heavily on you, even through all the good times, like, you know, from being on Bad Boy, having the hit record, you know, the trials and tribulations of finally making it in the music industry. But it sounds like from other interviews I've seen with you, just kind of always knew something wasn't right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, I had something that threw my, you know, that what I did, you know, threw my whole balance off, you know what I'm saying? So it was just one of those things that I needed to resolve in order for me to move forward, you know?
I think people don't realize that energy is real. You know, so, you know, like I drive Uber, and I've been driving Uber for 11 years, and I always tell people probably one of the most negative things about it is that when somebody's having a bad day, or when somebody has like, an effed up aura around them, you can feel it when they hop in the car.
Oh wow!
Like you could think about it. Like you could be in a room. Somebody who's having a fantastic day, they could bring other people up.
Right. That's a fact. That's a fact.
But somebody who's having, think about it, there's certain people you can't even really explain it. You just don't like being around them.
Yeah.
For some reason they bring your whole energy down, whatever it may be. And it sounds like from what you were saying that event, even though you probably tried to push out of your mind and stuff like that, that you knew eventually, like, whether you want to call it karma, whether you call it like, fate, intervention, like whatever label you want to throw in it, you knew something was probably going to happen to you eventually.
Right. And that's eloquent, man. It was like, you kind of like, and that becomes your day to day. You know what I'm saying? You're just, everything. You see people. Well, I'll speak for myself. When you see a person, when I was just out and about, it changed my whole demeanor. You know what I mean? So now, I'm watching my back. I'm doing, I'm moving accordingly. You know what I mean? Where I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't, at this point, I wouldn't be living like that. At this point, if that never happened, I would be just a guy with a record deal, worrying about whatever he had going on, musically and business wise. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it did change, my whole trajectory.
When did you actually first start making the choice, or at least the thought process that you might want to turn yourself in?
I remember kind of specifically one day, it was something that was on my mind for like maybe, realistically for maybe 2 years
as an adult. 2000s?
Yeah, I would say maybe 2004, 2005. I began to be like a little bit more conscious of what I was really, dealing with in my mind, So I said, okay, every once in a while it would hit harder, like, damn, whatever happened, or what I need to do to resolve this. Like I'm kind of tired of, thinking about this in a way, like, you know what I mean? So I remember specifically saying like, well, you could turn yourself in, you know what I mean? You would definitely find out what happened then. It was just something that passed, it was a passing thought,
Wait, so before you turned yourself in, you weren't even sure if he had died or not?
Nah, I wasn't even sure.
So because that would be a public record. So like if you but even then, if you would somehow checked,
how could you inquire that? You know what I mean? Like I didn't,
You say, I don't know, was there a murder in Harlem?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just one of them things that I probably could have did that. With but then what? You know what I'm saying?
But then at that time, you really been faced with the decision whether or not to do something now, because now you actually do know what happened.
Right.
So now if you thought karma was coming to get you in a bad way before then, now it's probably really coming to get you, because now you actually know.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know until I turned myself in. Right. So it was like, now is when you it's in the creator's hands now. You know what I'm saying? And
the incident originally happened in what year?
93.
Wow, he's talking about almost 20 years.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. It was like 17 years when I turned myself in.
Okay. Yeah. What was like the reaction of, I guess, whether the court system, the police officers could they even fathom what you were doing, or could they even say, man, like, or even when the judge had to sentence you? I mean, I imagine that, like, whatever sentence you got was probably a little bit more lenient than what it would have been if, you had been caught in the act when it first had happened.
You said it was
yeah. So what was, so like I guess first you could say what was like the reaction of like, you walk into a precinct and you tell whatever officer behind the desk, hey, like, I did something 13, 14, 15 years ago, like,
Well, at first they was like, yo, bro, like, it was like,
yo, bro,
if
I was you, I'll just get out of here.
I heard you, but I don't think I heard you. So if you want to stop now? I was like, yo,
I'm trying to help you out.
He said, word, okay, well, you sure that's what you want to tell me? I said, nah. I said, look, man, he was like, all right, well, you know what? Take my card, you know what I mean? If we'll find out anything, we'll give you a call, you know what I'm saying? what's your number? He wrote my number down. You know, he probably didn't.
He probably
was what's your number? You know what I'm saying? And then so I left, right? And so the only reason I came back was because they never called me and I lost my phone. It was like maybe like a week went by and I lost my phone.
So in your mind, you thought maybe they were trying to call you.
Yeah. And I was like, damn, okay, well, how can I resolve this? Now, I want to get this over with because I had other things going on. I said, I don't want to go into these business ventures with this on my mind anymore. You know?
Right.
So I said, yo, look, when they call, so then they, I lost the phone actually, obviously. So I went back and I said, all right, this is the last time. Just go ahead, boom, boom, boom. And this time when I went in, the officers were a little more efficient, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
You go back to the same police station?
Here we are, yeah. Went to the cell. I said, look, there was an officer here a couple of weeks ago. I told him about a crime that I committed, and I was trying to, get to the bottom of it. And he said he would give me a call. He never called me. And I lost my phone, so I just wanted to inquire one more time, and then, I was gonna go about my business. He was like, what? He said, so what? Explain to me what happened, you know what I mean? And I was like, da da da. He was like, so what day? So he said, all right, hold on, wait right here. So he goes in the back, and he comes back, and he's like, yo, so what were you wearing that day? And all this stuff like that. And I was like, yo, I had on this, that, this. He was like, oh, wait right here. He comes back. He was like, yo, could you come back here for me? We got a couple more questions for you, So then he asked me, then he started asking me like, yo, what kind of gun was it? Like, you know what I mean? And then when I started telling him that, he was like, yo, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because they start matching ballistics and stuff like that.
They started matching the gun, and he was like, then he started looking. Then they kind of find out when the DA was going over the actual case, when the DA came, they actually had my description, my name.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they was like, yeah, so I guess somebody might have seen it out the window or whatever, and actually said it was me. Like, yo, it was a guy. They said my name wrong. It was like a guy named Tremel. He had on this, that, you know what I mean? Because it was all like right on the report, you know what I mean? And he was.
But back in the day, like nobody even ever came.
Yeah, but they never questioned me or nothing. You know what I mean? Because I guess they just was like, who the hell is that? That could be anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was still on the report. You know what I mean? So, they were kind of like, they were convinced that I was the person who had did that. You know what I mean?
So now, after that point, how long did it take until you were actually locked up?
I got locked up that day.
Really?
Yeah, right then. They was like, yo, the DA came in the middle of the night. He came, he went down, ran it, asked me a bunch of questions, officially, where, what time, what did I do after? And he asked me everything that pertained to the case. Then they was like, yo, look, yeah, the guy died, you know what I mean? And, so what we're going to do now is we're going to arraign you and that, you know what I mean? If you want to take it to trial, stuff like that.
Well, at that point, there's no point even, did you go to trial?
Yeah, I did go to trial though, because we wound up getting a lawyer, and then the lawyer was like, yo, look, you should take this to trial, because this might not be you. Like, you know what I mean? This might not be your case. They might just be trying to just match something to you because you said something, and now, so he was like, yo, let's just take it to trial. You know what I mean? And then we take it to trial, and then, so they had to prove everything, They was like, yo, look, da-da-da, they showed the scene. I knew once they showed the scene, I was like,
that's me, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But, they just was like, my lawyer wanted to make sure they were it still could have been a coincidence. It could have been a whole other case, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they just made sure, and then, they wound up giving me the 15 to life.
Okay. And so, but you got granted clemency, right?
Yeah.
And that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
well, no, last year, 24.
Okay. Okay. Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And so.
No, you're right. I got granted clemency in 2023.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually almost 2 years ago to this day almost.
Oh yeah.
So I know you had a chance to in all shapes and forms you bettered yourself while you were in there, because I know you
for the most part, right?
Yeah, you got clean.
Yeah.
You finished your degree.
You're right. Yeah.
You know, and from what I was listening to your music, it sounded like you were definitely still writing.
For sure. Appreciate it. Yeah, man. You got time, especially doing a stretch like few over a decade. Any stretch. If you're in there, you got your facilities with you. I mean, your faculties with you, man. You got time to work on it. You know what I'm saying? So that was what I did.
And then how was it interacting with the other people who were there, probably who recognized you from the outside? Because I'm assuming like were you in Gen Pop?
Yeah, yeah. It was an experience. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I wasn't unfamiliar with being in jail. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, I just was there to do my time. I didn't really, worry about people too much. You know what I'm saying?
What was before that? What was the longest you had been in before?
I think I did a year. You know what I'm saying? I did a year back in like '96.
Okay.
The most I did was probably 11 months. You know what I mean? I did 11 months in shock back in like '96. I came home. I had a 2 to 6. It was a drug offense. So out there selling drugs and
But because it was non-violent, you probably got
Then I got the shock. Excuse me, I got the shock program. And then I came home, and then it was over. I wound up getting signed. You know what I mean? So the crime was a wrap. You know what I mean? It was for a couple of years. So years later, when things started going a little awry, I went to the island. I did a year on Rikers Island, which was 8 months. And that was probably the most I did,
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you come home, and now I guess life is, for better or worse, like, totally changed. And now I know you're trying to put the pieces back together and stuff like that, but it sounds like, you kind of came home and hit the ground running. Cause I guess like you knew, hey, that's 13 years of your life you're not getting back. You got to make up for,
Yeah, you gotta just go. Like, it's enough for the just procrastinating. You know what I'm saying?
And how does your spirit feel now? Like, now everything is behind you, and now coming out from behind the wall, now do you really do feel free because like, you actually did do the right thing and actually like, made your peace with that crime?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, man. Now, now I'm just, you kind of, you free to kind of just feel like, the balance has been kind of restored in a way, you know what I'm saying? So, the burden is lifted, you know what I'm saying? A lot, you know what I'm saying? So, I gotta definitely have more of a clearer, continence, clearer mindset and all of that.
So, what's the plan now? I know you're making music again. I know I've seen some of the other interviews you've done and stuff like that, like, kind of like, getting your feet back wet and like, letting people know that like, you're still back out here again.
Copy.
So what's in the future now?
I mean, now it's just, sky's the limit, man. You know what I'm saying? We got albums, music, obviously, you know what I'm saying? The book, try to maybe do some movies, man. And just, just give back, as much as I can, man. I know, people, if they can learn from anything I've done, if I could be an example of what to do, what not to do, I'm here. I'm kind of just, I know that these things, the way they happen, they happen, for a reason. So I'm just here, to just to add, not to take, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, true. And I know, like you said, how we talked about, you've been through the ups and downs, like the height of the industry to, spending the time in jail, getting back out, now getting things back going. First and foremost, I like to say, I'm proud of you for everything that you've done.
Thank you,
yeah, no, because I know, I'm sure when you told people what you're about to go do, that you probably had to get some of the craziest responses from people.
Yeah, I didn't really speak to anybody about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if anybody loved you, they would have talked you out of it.
Yeah.
Like,
I told my wife, the woman I was married to at the time, and she was like, for what? Like, she definitely tried to talk me out of it. Because we had our children. She was like, I know what you talking about. You know what I mean? I was like, I said, look, like, and then I just kind of brushed it off as well. You know what I mean? But then,
Yeah, man. You know, the road to success is not straight. You know, they say you have 2 points. You want to get there in a straight line, but the straight line kind of starts going all over the place.
Right.
You know,
and then success is what you deem it, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's not, you know, it's not always a definitive thing. You know what I'm saying? You can succeed. You know, I feel successful in redemption, or being not vindicated, but just
I mean, but no, you definitely have a redemption story.
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
You definitely have a redemption story, that's for sure. You know, and I think there's a lot of people probably could learn from your story. You know, and I think that's a good thing. I'm sure if you're writing a book about your life story, and I'm sure you probably talk about it, like, you know, in the music that you have coming out. You know, so it's not just like, you know, hey, like, you know, just like, you know, hear about my story, but also like listen to them and actually, like, you know, if you can, learn from them.
Right. You know what I mean? Definitely, man. You know, I believe, you know, I think, you know, people get a couple of lessons out of you know, my journey, you know, because we run from so many things, you know what I mean? It's a lot of times we don't even know how to deal with things that we're running from, you know what I'm saying? Or know that, you know, we need to address these things, you know what I'm saying? So.
Well, as I said earlier, thank you very much for sitting with me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
And a big shout out to Easy LP.
Word,
for the Easy
shout
LP.
Out to Easy, man.
But thank you again, man.
Of course.
I'm gonna make sure I stay tapped in with everything you got going on.
Appreciate you, man. Likewise.
Yeah, man. If, when the book comes out, you know, I want to buy my signed copy.
Oh, say no more. Say no more.
I'll make sure I want to buy a copy, get it signed by you. But yeah, man. But thank you, though, man.
Of course, man. Thank you.
No doubt, man.
Appreciate you.
All right, guys. Once again, this is UltraKellon. This is G Dep.
Peace.
All right. Thank you for tuning in for Real Estate Controls Everything Around Me. All right, guys.